Welcome to the Ketovangelist Kitchen. I'm Brian.
And I'm Carrie.
And this podcast is dedicated to making things simple and easy for you in the kitchen. Carrie Brown is a classically trained, world-class chef who has a passion for creating ketogenic recipes that taste better than anything you've ever experienced. But more than that, she loves teaching people how to cook the right way.
And each week on this podcast, Brian and I discuss all the ways you can create awesome keto food that is guaranteed to make you a rock star in the kitchen.
If you'd like to learn more about Ketovangelist Kitchen, you can go to KetoVangelistKitchen.com and sign up for the newsletter.
In exchange for your email address, you'll get brand new recipes delivered to your inbox, ready for you to whip up in the kitchen and enjoy with your friends and family.
So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and learn. You're about to enter the Ketovangelist Kitchen. Hello again, everybody. My name is Brian Williamson. This is the Ketovangelist Kitchen, and as always, Carrie Brown is here with me. Say hi, Carrie.
Hi.
Carrie is trying to be very, very quiet. I hurt her feelings by reprimanding her a minute ago, and I just want to take this minute to say I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I clinked my fork, people.
Yes, she drinks her tea with a fork. That should tell you something about Carrie Brown. I'm just saying. That's even more. That's the Britishest you can get. Like, that's even. I don't even know what to say to that.
I will have you know, Brian Williamson, that I have not had a cup of black tea since I was approximately 17.
And is there like a story associated with that? Like,
yeah.
Okay. Why?
My mother wanted me to drink tea. And so for 17-ish years, I drank tea because my mother wanted to.
Now
Me to.
You took a break, right? It wasn't like 17 straight years of just chugging tea all day long, right? I mean, it was like...
No, it was. It was, because in my house, you did what you were told. That was just how it was. You know, Sunday breakfast was at 8 and you were there. There was no, but what if I'm not there? You just were there. You were just, you know, when Mum said dinner's ready, you were there. There was no, you know, that's just how it was in my house. So you were given cups of tea at various times through the day, and I used to kind of leave them everywhere half drunk. She used to drive her completely batty. But so I'd have half the tea and then I'd leave it and then wander off, and then she'd find half drunk mugs of tea around the house, but I'd still have to drink them. And then for 17 years straight, I drank tea. And then one day I just kind of said, you know what? No, I'm not going to drink tea. And I remember her looking at me like, what? And I'm like, no, I don't like it. And I only drink it because you force it on me, and I'm not going to drink it anymore. And that went down like a nun's knickers, let me tell you.
Now, for those who are not familiar, that means it did not go down very well. That means it didn't go over well. Another idiom would be over like a lead balloon would be another way to say that.
Yeah. That went. Yeah, I think she kind of like didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks.
Did you still have to drink the tea though?
No.
Okay, then it was worth it.
Because then she swung completely the other way. And then I kind of started feeling terrible and guilty and like a wicked person for having said, you know, I really don't like tea, so I'm not going to drink it. So then I tried to drink tea and she was like, no, you're not drinking tea. No. So, you know, it was kind of weird.
You put that tea back. Don't you touch my tea. Put it away.
No, she didn't come from up north. She's just southerner.
What did she have a nickname for you, or did she just call you Carrie? Or did she call you Carrie Brown, like your full name all the time? What's your middle name? Oh, you're not gonna tell me. Now it's time to guess.
So that's kind of a bit of a can of worms, because
your middle name is a can of worms. Oh my god!
No, my whole name is a can of worms, because they didn't call me Carrie Brown because that's none of my names.
My gosh. Wait, you're an international fugitive, aren't you? Like, you're hiding under an assumed name.
Fugitive, and I was not born Carrie Brown, and I was never married to anyone called Brown, and I didn't get divorced from anyone called Brown, but I wasn't. My parents aren't called Brown, and they didn't christen me Carrie. So yeah, my whole name's made up.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know who I'm talking to now. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's going to be a story we're going to have to unravel as the show progresses, as the episodes move on.
So no, they didn't call me Carrie Brown, and they still don't call me Carrie Brown, because despite the fact that I've been Carrie Brown for at least 10, 12 years. I've been Carrie for a really, really long time, like more than half my life.
So when you were trying to find a name, did you just try to find the verb that best described how you like things done? I like things carried. I shall be Carrie. No.
I just, and of course this is this statement will we could get a shrink on the show and talk about this for 8 years, but I at some point in my life, around my early 20s, I realized that I was never gonna be who my parents wanted me to be.
Like literally, like your name is Susan. I shan't be Susan anymore.
So the name they gave me represented something I could never achieve, and so I just decided that I was just going to be me. But that name represented something I could never achieve, someone I was never going to be, and so it just didn't make sense to me. So I just picked the name. I just picked a name that I wanted to be, and that was Carrie. And that was, as I say, that was in fact, when I moved to Australia. So that was when I was 21. So I became Carrie when I was 21.
You have an American suburban level of like parental like resentment. Like you could be like, you could be in a punk band. That's how this is playing out. Like you could totally be like Johnny Rotten's friend. That's what's going on here. Like you're rebelling that hard against your parents. Kudos to you for all of that. Like you moved across the world and changed your name. So I don't even know what to say to that. Although
I changed my first name first, like a long time ago, and then I have been married, which but not many other people do, because relationships to me are private and I don't talk about them. But I have been married, and
well, you know that people are going to hear you say that, right? That this is okay. All right.
Right. So yes, I've been married. Woohoo!
Me too.
And in America, land of the free,
America,
when if you're a woman, as part of certainly in Washington State, on the divorce papers in Washington State, there's a little line that says after once the divorce is final, I shall be known as.
Oi, what's your new name? What's your new name?
And I didn't want to keep my married name because that made no sense to me.
Okay, and so here's my theory. Hold on, here's my theory. You were illiterate at the time, and you thought it was asking what color shoes are you wearing, and you were like, well, clearly it's brown. So that's how Carrie Brown came to be. Am I right?
No, you're so wrong. So anyway, so you get to kind of decide who you want to be, and I didn't want to keep my married name because that made no sense to me, and I didn't actually want to go back to my maiden name because that also made no sense to me. So I looked for a family. I looked at all the people in my life and thought, if I kind of who are the family in my life that I most respect and look up to and would choose to be a part of, and their name was Brown. So I wrote in on the divorce paper, henceforth I shall be known as Carrie, middle name Brown, and so it was. So
you wrote middle name?
No, I didn't. I wrote my middle name.
And you won't tell me what it is?
No.
Okay. Not now or ever?
Ever.
Oh, is that because it's a name that you don't like, or is it because it's really hard to pronounce? Like like Nargalsius. It's Nargalsius, isn't it?
It's Ermintrude. No, it's not.
That's brilliant.
It's not Ermintrude.
All right, so
Ermintrude, however, will be the name of my next cat, so you should store that in your repository of good names.
Okay. I'm writing this down now to keep track of it. So was Blumenthal any of the names? Like were you christened Blumenthal,
No.
Espadrille, Go Lightly? That's
No.
like that's your given name? No? Okay.
No. And so a lot of people, not a lot, but people, when I ever mention, and because typically I don't say, hey, I'm Carrie Brown, but that's not my real name, because that would be.
You totally
really
should. That should be like that should be on like your resume and your business cards and everything. Carrie Brown, not really. No, you should. Oh! You're like J.K. Rowling, but it's the J.K. stands for just kidding. I'm J.K. Brown. J.K.
Because I am Carrie Brown, so it would be dumb to say I'm Carrie Brown, but not really. So I don't do that. On the odd occasion that it comes up, which is very, very rarely, because most people actually don't make their name up, so it's not a common kind of subject matter.
Most people don't. You're right.
But on the odd occasion it comes up, the next question is typically, so what's your real name? And I'm like, Carrie Brown.
Oh.
And they go, no, your real name. And I'm like, Carrie Brown. Do you want to see my passport, my driver's license? I mean, I could show you anything. My real name is Carrie Brown. What my parents used to call me is completely irrelevant.
All right. So what you're saying is you'll tell me later.
No.
Oh God. I thought it was, I misunderstood that one. Okay.
It's irrelevant. I'm Carrie Brown. That's the end of the story.
You know what? If you're Carrie Brown, so am I. I'm Carrie Brown too. We're the Carrie Browns. Or would it be like Cole's de Sac? We're the Carries Brown. We have to make sure.
Let's talk about herbs.
Speaking of made up names, herb. All right.
Because herb has an H. So in England we say herb, but I know in America you say herb, because I understand that if someone says herb, everybody else thinks you're a bit of a twit.
Well, no, they think you're talking about an actual dude or, a person of some kind. Herb's the guy's name. Herb is what you buy at the grocery store. Now, if you could buy herb at the grocery store, that's a really weird grocery store because they're selling people and someone needs to investigate that. So,
well, when I first arrived in America and I landed in Washington State, I very quickly learned, or at least in Washington, that if you used the H, it meant you were kind of dumb.
No, that's a.
There must be a Washington thing then.
Yeah, that's a Washington thing.
Okay, so I can say herb and people won't think I'm stupid.
Well, they don't think you're stupid, but they'll have no idea what you're talking about. If you're talking about herbs, those are two different words. Herb is the guy that was with Peaches in the 70s singing songs. Herbs are what you put on your food to make them taste like not your food. That's so herb.
So at the beginning, it's not spelled ERBS.
Yeah, but it's the H.
It's spelled HERBS.
The H is silent. I don't know if you caught on to that. It's like what's another word with an H that's silent? Thought. The second H. It's silent.
It doesn't count. It's not the first letter.
No, it isn't. Well, hospital. There's another one that's silent.
Right. So in England, if you drop the H, that means you're kind of being common and you're not talking properly. So you would say hospital. I'm going to the hospital, mate.
You wouldn't say going to the. Okay, this is another British thing. You wouldn't say you don't go to the university and you don't go to the hospital and you don't take a holiday. It's I'm going to hospital, or I'm going to university, or I'm going I'm going on holiday. Right? Those are the there's no what's the word? The A, an, or the I forget what they're called in front of it. Now I feel stupid. It's definite or an article. If there's no article in front of it, that's what it is.
In England, if you drop the H, it's because you're lazy or a commoner.
And we are neither, right?
We are neither. Well, actually, the Queen thinks we're commoners, but
Well, I think she's got a reason for that, right? I mean, she was elected, so she can think that.
You would say hospital or holiday, as you correctly pointed out.
All right. So we're talking.
So if it's hospital and holiday, then it's also herb.
All right. So clearly, we're never going to come to grips on this one. This is going to. We're on the brink of an international incident with this.
Again?
It's like a weekly thing for us. All right. So we're talking about herbs today.
Yes.
Which, okay, for the Americans listening, that is not a collection of guys with fantastic mustaches. Okay, we're talking about.
Oh, no,
plants.
actually, no. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, moving on. All right, so what herbs are we talking about exactly?
Well, first off, we're talking about all herbs.
That's not the same thing as allspice, right? Those are different things.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because and the reason we're talking about this is because last week, which was Thanksgiving, I spent the whole week not cooking turkey. I spent the whole week making stuff up for our next project, and I was using a lot of herbs. And so in the process of chopping herbs and things, I thought we should talk about herbs because there's some tricks to herbs and there's some things about herbs that people might not know, or they might get confused when they see a recipe for dried herbs and they only have fresh or vice versa, and why are they different and why would you use one and not the other. And so I'm very topical. I'm like, I was chopping a lot of herbs, so then I wanted to talk about it.
Whenever I'm cutting things up, I want to talk about them too. I'm just, I'm funny like that. Okay, so there are differences between herbs and spices and salt, right? And minerals, as you know, those are different things. They all use flavor. They're all added for flavor and things.
Right.
But how do you differentiate between herbs and spices?
Well, herbs are like micro vegetables, which might be scary for you, but they're actually kind of, grown living planty things, bits of tree and leaf and bush and shrub. And spices are ground, powdered things.
Right. Okay.
That come typically from seeds or that kind of thing. It's rather like spice is more like the fruit of, whereas the herbs are the foliage of.
Foliage. Okay. So there's the difference, right? So a herb is coming from what's known as an herbaceous plant or a herbaceous plant, right? It's got the leaves that we're dealing with. And sometimes in the case of, depending on what you're doing, it can be, the actual sprigs too, the actual small little branches that you're throwing into food. Now you'll take them out. You're not actually going to eat them, but they are part of the flavoring process. I'm thinking of rosemary in particular. Okay. So
bay leaves, often you'll toss a bay leaf into something when you're making bone broth or whatever, and then you'll fish it out afterwards because you don't want to eat a whole piece of bay leaf.
No, you don't. I use 3 or 4 bay leaves every time I use one because I like them a lot, and they will slice your throat up if you eat them. Just, I'm telling you, they're like a scene from West Side Story. That's how bad it is. They'll cut you up. So. All right, so what are we talking about with herbs then?
So general things, the things that came to mind when I was chopping them, because I was using kind of 50% fresh herbs and 50% dried herbs. And I thought people might kind of go, well, why should you use fresh there and dried there? And if we haven't got one or the other, how could we, if we've only got dried, do we use a different amount than fresh, and so on and so forth. So some basic kind of guidelines with herbs are fresh versus dried. You want to use about 3 times as much fresh versus dried, because dried are like dried fruits or other dried things. They're concentrated. So the oils are what give the flavor. So the oils are concentrated in the dried version.
Right.
And so you need it's typically around a third. So if you use 1 teaspoon, if the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of dried, herbs, then you're going to want at least 3 teaspoons of fresh to get the same strength of flavor.
All right, yeah. So dried herbs, the stuff that you buy in the containers, they've been dehydrated, right? So that's why because the water content of a fresh herb is what's diluting the flavoring effect of the oils. So when you remove the oil, when you remove the water from the product itself, you are now ounce for ounce, there's more oil, per volume. So it's got a more impactful sort of flavor. That's why they dry them, so they are more flavorful. But a lot of people like to grow their own in their house, or in someone else's house, and they sneak in and steal them when they're not looking. Of course, I could be making that part up, but still, lots of people like to grow their own herbs. So if you have your own fresh herbs, you have to compensate for the fact that they are you'll need more of them.
You will need more of them. And say the ratio typically, if you're just looking at a recipe and you're lost and you're going, well, I've only got dried, but it says fresh, then you want to cut the amount down to about a third.
All right. So then let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of herbs that we're talking about. I think there are some that are pretty much ubiquitous, right? Like it doesn't matter what kind of kitchen that you'll walk into in the Western tradition, you're going to find these herbs, right? Because they're basically, standards like oregano or thyme or sage or rosemary, right? So what are some of the most common, and what are some of the more exotic or least common that you can think of?
So oregano, as we like to call it,
oregano
is, as you say, and I think that the ones that seem to pop up in recipes most would be oregano or oregano, thyme, rosemary. Of course, my mind's gone completely blank now.
Right.
Sage.
Right.
Sage, although sage is a little bit less common. My absolute favorite is tarragon, which is lesser used, lesser known, but if you hang around here long enough, you're going to have to start cooking with it because it's fabulous, and I'm going to put it in everything, and you're going to try it and you go, wow, tarragon is awesome. And then basil. Of course, basil is very, very, very popular, a lot more so here than in England.
Now, Basil actually was Sherlock Holmes for a while, right? That's, if I'm remembering correctly. Basil Rathbone. Nothing. Is this thing on? Hello? No? Okay.
Herbs. Brian.
Oh, sorry. I was moving
I'm
on.
normally the random one.
Right.
And of course, parsley.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
All right, here's the thing about parsley. It has no flavor at all. Like zero. It has zero flavor. Like I've actually.
Have you ever tried to eat a bunch of parsley, just fresh parsley, put it in your mouth and eat it?
Okay, you've met me, right? Like if it's vegetables, I'm pretty much not going to eat it, right?
Okay.
So no, I haven't.
I know this. When I was a teenager, and I was dating, and I was dating a very nice young man called Tim. And
was he an enchanter? Was he Tim the Enchanter?
He was pretty enchanting, actually. Yes, he was very handsome, and he was a very nice boy, and my parents loved him, and
so he had to go. I'm just straight up. He had to go.
He had to go. Exactly. You're getting the hang of me.
Right,
yeah,
right.
He had to go because my parents liked him. So anyway, so one day Tim had a few too many pints of beer, and the next day he had a bit of a hangover. And I had read somewhere that eating parsley was a really good cure for a hangover. So I gave him a bunch of parsley. And that's how I know that just straight up bunch of parsley is probably one of the most disgusting things ever.
That worked on a lot of levels then. Yeah. All right. So
a bunch of parsley plain, I do not recommend.
Well, it probably just tasted like grass. That's what like, and not the Washington State kind of grass. That's a totally different kind of grass. That's a different kind of herb.
Anyway, there's parsley, which is used in all sorts of things and is incredibly cheap, and you can buy it by the 99 cents here in the States. And so that's awesome. And then cilantro, or as we know it in England, is coriander.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
Because I can't stand cilantro. My wife loves cilantro. Now, it comes from the
Get into a high five.
Right. It comes from a coriander. Do what?
You have the gene too.
Right.
I have cilantro tastes like soap gene.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's the case. It tastes gross to me. I've not actually downed some soap, so I'm not exactly sure. But
I think he's about 25% of the population. Cilantro, you either love it or you hate it, and about 25. But it is a genetic thing, so there's about 25% of us that just think cilantro is just the most horrible thing ever. And apparently, you and I are both there.
Now, here's the thing, though. It comes from coriander seeds, right? Cilantro is grown from coriander seeds. I love coriander. I think coriander is a really nice flavor, but how in the heck does it go from coriander being nice to cilantro being ass? Like what happens there?
And I'm with you. So coriander, ground coriander, the spice I will use with abandon and love it, and it's great. But coriander, the leafy tree thing, yuck.
All right. Okay, so and here's another thing, do not get parsley and coriander confused. They kind of look alike. Right. Trust me on this one. You don't want to do that.
That's true.
All right, so let's see. Other kinds of herbs. There's obviously dill. There's fennel. There's let's see. You said basil, right? Already?
Yes.
There's
or basil, as you people like to call it.
Basil. What about cumin? Is that a spice?
Cumin's more of a spice.
Okay.
It's just a spice.
All right. So basically we're looking for leafy stuff. If you go in and you see more or less something that you would expect to come off of a small tree. That's kind of what the herb stuff. Tarragon, you said already, thyme, those kinds of things. So the
other difference before we continue, the other kind of major thing to know about herbs, as well as apart from the fact that fresh you need 3 times as much as dried, is that with fresh are very much more delicate than dried. So typically, if you're adding your herbs at the beginning of the cooking time, you're going to want dried, because the cooking would kind of destroy the flavor of the fresh. So you'll often see in recipes, if it's got dried, that probably means that it's the kind of recipe where you're going to sling the herbs in, and then you're going to toss it in the oven for, in a casserole, for example, for an hour, right? You wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to swap fresh herbs out in that recipe, or you would, but you wouldn't put the herbs in at the beginning. You would cook the casserole, bring it out, add the fresh chopped herbs, stir them in. So that's the other big thing about fresh versus dried, is that they're a lot sturdier. They're not so delicate. They can withstand a lot of heat and not just go completely to pot. Whereas fresh herbs, you'll destroy the oils and all the flavors. So if you have a recipe that calls for dried and you see that there's a bunch of cooking involved and all you have is fresh, the way to substitute is to put 3 times as much fresh herbs and add them at the end of cooking, not at the beginning, and vice versa. If that's true, if you see a recipe where the fresh herbs are thrown in at the end and you have only dried herbs, you want to reduce the quantity by 1/3 and then put the herbs in at the beginning and not the end.
Okay, so because let's face it, the cooking process, the process of taking food from not cooked to cooked is, wait for it, damaging on a cellular level to the actual food. So yes, you need to make sure that the ingredients that you're including can make it through and still provide the flavor profiles that you're looking for. Because what'll happen is your fresh herbs are already diluted. And if you're cooking them down, think about it. Nobody likes really, well, maybe they do. Few people like really mushy broccoli, let's say, right? So if you cook broccoli, if you boil it to the point where it's just basically mashed, Yeah, it's disgusting. Like it's gross.
Has no taste.
Right, and that's what you're kind of doing to the fresh herbs when you put them through that cooking process, especially if it's long and the heat is kind of high. So
yes, you can switch between fresh and dry, but just remember those two things. Otherwise, you may end up disappointed in the end result. So quantity and then cooking time. And yes, you can switch recipes one for the other, but you just have to bear those two things in mind.
right. So don't put. Look, the flavor is going to be there, right? So again, you, Carrie Brown, if that is your real name, and it's not, but it
is my real name.
If you and I have talked about this before, like recipes are not some magical mystical thing, right? You can adjust. Look, you're going for flavor profiles, folks. You're going for flavor profiles and textures. So you can make those kinds of adjustments. In other words, you don't have to put the herbs in at a particular time if you don't have the exact, like if we're talking fresh versus dried. The flavor will be there if you do it the right way. You just have to pay attention to what you're doing. It's not a matter of you're going to ruin it just because you waited until the end. No, that's not the case, right? You have to just be smart about it. Listen to what Carrie's saying. Because I'm not. Someone should listen to what Carrie's saying. I'm just saying.
I'm sure that Mrs. Williamson is listening to what I'm saying.
She probably is. And then she'll tell me what you said, because I'm not really listening right now. So
those were my two, because I know people, and particularly, well, depending where you are in the world, but like, if you're in Seattle in winter or a lot of places in winter, then the fresh herbs are more difficult to find, or they're uber expensive, or if you grow your own, which I highly recommend, there aren't any because they're all dead for the winter. So I know a lot of people can be like, but it says fresh and I don't, so I'm just going to toss dry in and hope for the best. Well, don't do that. Just take these two guidelines in mind when you make substitutions for dry versus fresh herbs.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where once you figure it out, it's a no-brainer every time from there on, right? So
I highly recommend growing your own. I highly and I
was just going to ask you that. That was my next question, and when you started talking just now, that was what I was going to ask.
I have tubs outside on my terrace here. I have tubs which grow.
And Tubbs is not a cat. Tubbs is not one of your cats. Tubbs is actually you're actually
Tubbs
referring
is not
to. Okay.
One of my cats.
All right.
So I do have tubs, and it saves me a fortune and they're very, I find herbs very hard to kill. They're kind of prolific, and you actually, you get $1.25 on a mint starter, and 3 months later you've got mint. Mint has overgrown your yard. I highly recommend growing mint in a pot that is contained. Otherwise, literally, you will have a mint farm in a very short space of time.
And everything will taste like mint. It doesn't matter. It will take everything over, and it will overpower everything. Just trust me on this one.
So I highly recommend that next spring, depending on, of course, where you are, next whenever you get to have herb starts come to your local garden centre, that you go get a few pots and plant yourself some herbs, because you save so much money, not just in the price of the herbs, but also in the, I forgot to get chives. Well, that's okay, because I have a pot of them outside, and I can just run outside and snip, and I don't have to go to the store, and it's just awesome. Having fresh herbs on your back doorstep is absolutely the way to go. Plus, there's something, for me anyway, there's something very therapeutic about successfully growing stuff.
Right.
And so it's just nice to just have your own, and you know that it's not been sprayed with pesticide, unless you've sprayed it with pesticide. And it's just pure, fresh, lovely, yummy food that can make whatever you're cooking taste better, enhance what you're cooking, and you don't have to go to the store to get it, and it's cheap because you can get you can get 6 months worth of chives for $1.25.
Hey, I want to suggest one other thing in line with what you're talking about. if you're growing your own or you have access to fresh stuff, you need to do a taste test, right? So take, you have some dried stuff and you have some fresh stuff. See what we're talking about, right? So taste one, then taste the other, and see the differences so you can understand. Because look, figuring out how to make your own recipes is about determining flavor profiles that you're seeking. So and this is a topic that Carrie and I are working on that we're going to be talking about later, developing your flavor memory so that you can actually combine things correctly for what you like. So if you have fresh stuff, chew on it a little bit, see how it is, and then compare that to some of the dry stuff, and see the differences in the flavors and how much one is concentrated over the other. It's just kind of eye-opening. All right. Is there anything else that we need to talk about with herbs? Oh, is there an incorrect way to cut them whenever you're trying to add, like if you've got fresh stuff, is it just basically chop rough and then you're good? Or is there some kind of herbs require other different kinds of attack before you add them?
No, not really. Just, that I'm sure you've all seen at some point a chef somewhere chopping herbs, get them all in a pile and get a big chef's and then just, hold the point and just chop, 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 chop. Motion is the best way to do it, unless you've got a little chopping machine thingy, little baby food processor. You can do that too, otherwise But the other thing to note is that the soft-leaved herbs, like basil, chives, cilantro, dill, they should be cooked as little as possible because they'll lose their flavor because they're delicate. Whereas the tougher-leaved herbs, so bay leaves, rosemary, the tougher things can stand up to a bit more heat in cooking.
Right.
Fresh.
And the reason you want to chop stuff up is because that increases the surface area of the actual oil that's the flavor stuff. So,
right, and it releases it actually allows the oils to be released easier.
All right. Okay, so that's everything that everyone needs to know about herbs. Find the flavors that you like, buy some plants, grow them, and love them. Right?
And experiment.
Right, experiment.
When you're at the store next, look at all those certainly in America. So I assume other countries, but I don't know. They have those little like plastic flat packs of fresh herbs. Pick up a new one, take it home, and lob it in your sauce for your chicken. Do something different.
Again,
and I highly recommend you start with tarragon because tarragon is awesome, and it's awesome. So I highly recommend you try it.
All right. So again, the attorneys are telling me that we do not recommend lobbing anything in the kitchen.
Your attorneys have no sense of adventure. That's all I have to say.
That is true. That's their job. They're not supposed to be adventurous. They're supposed to keep us out of jail.
Then I have no interest in them being on our podcast.
I shan't have a conversation with them then.
Okay.
All right. What is the final word for this then? Or was that it?
Use them.
Okay. Experiment. See what you like, right? So there's no right or wrong, right? When it comes to your flavorings, it's what you like, right?
One thing about there are some things that go better than others.
No, there's not. No, there's not. You're wrong.
Yes, there is.
Nuh-uh.
So pork and sage go very, very well together. Turkey and tarragon go very, very well together. Lamb and mint go very well together. So there are kind of things that just really work very, very well. The difference between herbs and spices is that with spices, you can sling 15 different spices in there to get completely different flavors. You can't really combine too many herbs all at the same time and get a nice result. So you don't really want to go more than, 3 or 4 in any one mix. Whereas with spices, you can, as I say, you can put 15 different things in and it's all goodness. But with herbs, you'll end up with a disappointing result if you go too crazy with different types of herbs in the same recipe.
All right. So there you go. That's the key. Experiment a little bit, see what you like, work on it, grow your own, the whole bit. All right, Carrie Brown. again, this has been fun as usual. And I guess I'll talk to you next week, maybe?
Oh, okay then.
All right then.
Next week.